Welcome to season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we have with us Coach Kyle LaCroix. You may recognize the last name. His wife, Lisa, was on the podcast about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And Kyle they're a tennis family. They're both working in the industry. Kyle's a former junior player. He is an incredible coach, and his kind of passion these days is all around coach education, helping coaches be better at their jobs, educating them better, helping them have more success, understanding the full picture of what it means to be a tennis coach from all perspectives, whether that's in a club, in an academy, at a city park, whatever it is. And he's got some very definite ideas on what it's going to take to make all of those things happen. So I'm super excited to have Kyle with us. We initially connected through LinkedIn, and he reached out to me and he's like, I keep seeing your podcast. I think I'm meant to come on. Is it okay if I come on? I'm like, absolutely. So I hope you guys enjoy listening or watching this conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. So now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Kyle LaCroix. Coach Kyle LaCroix, welcome to the podcast. This was meant to be, and I'm super excited to finally get you on.
Absolutely, Lisa. Thanks for having me on. It's funny. I keep seeing the podcast in my social media feeds, and I'm like, maybe this is a sign, and it actually was. So I'm glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So as I do with all my first-time guests, I'm going to ask you to give us a little bit of your tennis story, how you got started playing, and where tennis has taken you in your life.
Sure. Well, that's probably a whole podcast unto itself, but I'll start with sort of the beginning. I grew up on the west coast of Florida. Was born in Clearwater. Grew up in the Tampa Bay area. I actually started off as a competitive swimmer. I was pretty good at that. So good, in fact, that the coaches were talking about Olympics and all that stuff, and I was still really, really super young. And for some reason, the 5 a.m. practices and the chlorine in the water and the chemicals and having sinus infections every other week and the whistle blowing just didn't appeal to me for the rest of my life. And, just sort of as cross training, I started picking up tennis. Wouldn't say I was a natural in the beginning, but there's something about it. I think it was sort of similar to swimming, where there was that repetition and that discipline, and it was very physical, but it was sort of like not touching, right? So it wasn't like football or basketball. So I really enjoyed tennis, and I found a hitting wall, and after that I was hooked. I'm like, this wall does not miss. This is the toughest opponent. So I just started playing, and I was absolutely addicted to it and played as long as I could. I mean, I was one of those kids that I'd ride my bike down to the neighborhood courts, and my mom would have to come and drag me off the court, and I just didn't want to leave. And then it started just getting a lot more serious, and obviously playing tournaments and being competitive in that aspect. But I always knew I wanted to do something in tennis, and obviously the dream for every young junior player is to go pro. And for me, growing up, my idols were Stefan Edberg and Boris Becker, and I wanted to win Wimbledon at 17 like Becker. And spoiler alert, I did not win Wimbledon at 17. In fact, at 17,
were you on that pathway though? Were you? Good?
I was becoming pretty good. Again, I had a very early dream at 12, 13, 14 that like I was hungry and I was going to do whatever it took. And fortunately, my parents are blue collar people, so I had the work ethic. I understood what that meant, and I wasn't afraid to do it. But also my parents are blue collar. They didn't really have the money. I didn't really have the top coaches or the academies. I didn't really have the lessons. So I was pretty much self-taught. But in that self-teaching, it was just I studied Vic Braden. I read as many books in Tennis Magazine as possible. So I got to actually a pretty fairly competitive level. But I remember at 17, the year I was supposed to win Wimbledon, like Boris Becker, I actually lost a match to this Argentinian kid. And it's the only match in my life I've ever lost love and love. I've always been able to hold my serve at least once. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6". I'm now 245. Like, I can bring it. I like to serve and volley, and I can always hold my serve. That's not a problem. But I played this Argentinian kid who showed up with a couple rackets in his hand, and he had on his hat backwards, and he just didn't look that interested, and he absolutely drummed me. And that kid was David Nalbandian. And later
Oh my
on,
gosh.
he had a pretty good backhand, which for me, I was like, oh, this kid's a South American. He's gonna only have a forehand. He's gonna be a clay quarter. So I kept going to his backhand, which is a horrible move. But no, so needless to say, a couple years later, he was playing in the finals of Wimbledon and not me. But that was sort of it. But I knew, okay, maybe that's not the level that is my purpose. Maybe I'm supposed to get into the industry somehow. I really want to get into coaching. I really want to get into teaching. And so I found this program in this small Division II school called Ferris State University. And they had this program called Professional Tennis Management. And if there was ever a program that was made for me, this was it. It was, I mean, I've never been to Michigan before. I don't know anyone in Michigan. I've never seen snow before. I'm a Floridian. Like, what am I doing here? But I just knew the program is the program that was meant for me. And so I went up there for a couple of years, really loved it, made a lot of connections and everything else. And, one thing led to another. Needless to say, I moved right back to Florida because I couldn't take any more winters up there. Couple hiccups along the way, but needless to say, I found a job at a private club in Boca Raton, Florida. It was new construction. Took it from 0 to 1. Literally, we had nothing, no programming, no students. And we built something really, really special. And I was there for a little over 19 years. And, in that time, I did a lot of work for what was USPTA, now RSPA, and just made a lot of connections. And, after that, it was great. I mean, I was doing what I loved, but obviously you kind of evolve as a person, as a professional. So in 2024, February 11th was my last day at the club. I left and I sort of started full-time my company now, which is called SETS, Specialized Educational Tennis Solutions. And, we help pros. It's sort of like venture capital. We find really good coaches and professionals in the industry, and we actually invest in them. We pay for their education. We pay for their certification. We pay for their conferences. Just 2 weeks ago, I paid for 10 of my clients to come out to Hawaii and to do the RSPA conference. So it's not a bad gig. I like helping out the next generation. And it just provides education. It provides networking. It provides career advancement. And, I'm really blessed with what I'm doing. And, obviously being a club pro is a bit of a slog. It can get tough. And I have lots of stories in the Boca Raton club industry, but now I wake up every morning and I count my blessings. I get to do what I'm doing now. So,
What's your revenue stream? How are you funding these or aspiring pros?
so it's an investment of capital from them, but that capital goes immediately back to them. Not only is it 100% tax deductible for them, but I also, from that capital, I then use it to pay for all their education for the rest of their career. By the way, this is a service that lasts in perpetuity. It's not like, hey, I'm going to be working with you for 10 weeks and see you later. I'm in it for the long haul. In terms of the revenue stream, it's simple. Once I get that initial capital, I then invest it, and it's up to me to kind of manage the float. So it takes a little bit of fiduciary discipline and responsibility on my end, but I'm okay with that. I mean, I have an MBA from the University of Michigan and I have a master's from Stanford University. So, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm probably the dumbest, but I seem to do well enough to be able to keep the business going. So that's all.
That's awesome. So now that we know who you are and what you're doing, I would love to dig in to your thoughts about what is happening in the tennis coaching industry right now. We have seen the name change to RSPA. We have seen USTA announce its USTA coaching initiative. I seem to be running a theme lately, talking with coaches who are very interested in coach education and helping the industry improve as a whole. And you are another person in that kind of little box of, there's something going on with coaching in this country. We need to take some action and make things better. Can you start us off by explaining what it is that you're seeing in US coaching as compared to our competitors, for lack of a better term, around the globe, because tennis is global? We see players come from every corner of the world. We see American players going to other parts of the world to be trained and to learn how to play this game. So can you give us kind of a snapshot from the perspective of someone who has coached, does coach, and is very interested in improving the state of coaching in our country?
Sure. You said you wanted to dig in, so I hope you brought a shovel. But
I'm good at troop. Let's go.
Absolutely. So I guess we can start with the first thing, which is sort of the state of the industry. And for the record, I'm certified by RSPA, PTR, GPTCA, and I have a whole alphabet soup next to my name of acronyms. But I am an RSPA Master Professional, one of only, I think, 200 in the world. So, the state of the industry right now, I know RSPA changed their name after 97 years from USPTA to RSPA. I thought that was a good business move, strategic. Obviously, it's all racket sports, and that's sort of where the club industry is going, right? And I think it's important to kind of differentiate, because there's sort of club coaches, and then there's kind of academy, competitive player, high-level junior coaches, and all that stuff. So I think that's a key differentiator, because it's two completely different mindsets, two completely different cultures, right? I think in terms of the club industry, we're seeing a lot of professionals who are working really, really hard, and they have a market share to compete with, and they have a membership that can obviously come with the two E's, ego and entitlement. So they have to be able to manage and balance those. So the club pro is much, or club professional, I should say, is much more rounded towards the business and the business acumen. You're essentially a CEO of a company. You're running the rackets department at a club, the tennis, the pickleball, the padel, the platform, the squash, whatever it might be, whatever racket sports you have. So it becomes a lot more business rounded, as opposed to just trying to be on court and fix a forehand and get super, super technical with that. Then you have the sort of, academy coach, or, independent private coach, and you're just working with players on and on. There's nothing wrong. I've been in both. I worked at an academy. I worked at Saddlebrook Resort. I was a Hopman tennis pro. It's just a different business dynamic. It's a different business structure. So, when it comes to the students, you have different students. You have people who have equity in it, like membership, and then you have people who are coming in for a week, 2 weeks, or maybe they're with you full time, and you have to actually be able to train and develop them. But in terms of the industry, we need to do a better job of coach and professional education. Do you realize that to be a tennis coach, it doesn't really take that much at all? For most people, it takes a cell phone, right? You take a video of yourself giving a tip, and it's like, hey, I'm Mr. Tennis Coach on Instagram. And 95% of the advice on Instagram is pretty awful. But unfortunately, people just see, hey, you're a face on a screen, I have to listen to you. But most people don't realize this. It takes more education hours to make a donut than it does to become a tennis coach. This is true.
That's really sad.
This is true. Dunkin' Donuts if you get hired by Dunkin' Donuts, you have to go through 8 hours of training in order to actually start working there a full shift. Meanwhile, as a tennis coach, people can just go out. They have a net in the trunk of their car. They go out to a parking lot, a basketball court, or maybe an existing tennis court, and a basket of balls, and they just start feeding away, and they start telling people what to do. And it's like, wow, like that's a
And
little bit
people pay
shady.
money for that.
Oh
People
yeah,
pay
oh
them
yeah, racket back.
without
Yeah,
right.
it's like
No
racket
due
back.
diligence, no
No,
research.
zero.
Um,
There's no safe play, no UST safe play, no nothing. And plus, a lot of coaches were working with kids, we're working with adults. It's like, wow. And people just assume it's like, hey, I saw this guy or I saw this girl on Instagram, or hey, he said something really cool, or he made a funny sketch. I should take a lesson from him. And it's a little bit dangerous. I mean, the tennis industry, the rackets industry is so unregulated, and that's something that I know RSPA and PTR and the rest of them are trying to do a better job at. And I think that's also part of UST coaching, is they're just trying to do a better job at it. I know UST coaching is a hot button topic. At the end of the day, if we're trying to make coaches better and therefore trying to make players better, I don't care whose acronym is next to it. Let's try to support it. Yes, I know there's some allegiances and there's some political undertones to it, but at the end of the day, we're all in it for the same purpose, right? We want people to enjoy the sport. We want people to get better, and that's kind of where it should be. In terms of whose name is next to what product, I mean, that's a matter of personal opinion, and you're not going to put everyone 100% on the same page. But at the end of the day, like, we're in this because we love the sport. You do this podcast because you love the sport. I'm out there working my tail off because I love the sport. I'm trying to make it better for the next generation. And I think that's the important thing. If we start getting into the alphabet soup and we start getting into, oh, well, it's this side is right and this side is wrong, and it becomes very divisive. And it's not that diversity is our strength, it's that unity is our strength. And we just need to unite in terms of, what do we really want to do in this country? Do we want to make the next US Open champion, or do we want to make, the next 2 million kids absolutely love tennis and play for the rest of their life? Because I can tell you, there's a lot of Grand Slam champions that no longer play tennis. In fact, they don't even want to see a tennis racket. But if we can get a couple million kids out there playing and they love it so much that they're going to play for the rest of their life, to me, that's greater than creating a Grand Slam champion. I
I'm
mean,
with you.
I
1,000%.
I might not get the street cred on Instagram because I don't have it put in my bio, but at the end of the day, I have a kid who's now giving back to the sport, and then they're going to teach their kid and their grandkid, and it keeps going on, and that's how we kind of keep the game going. Doesn't matter what your level is. The tennis ball doesn't know if you're a 3-0 or a 5-0, right? Just play and have fun. I mean, I'm going to play for the rest of my life because of that. And fortunately, I'm grateful because tennis brought my wife and I together. We met at a USPTA district meeting, and she plays tennis. And I'm not afraid to admit she's a heck of a player. And from the baseline, she kicks my butt, as she should. But it's a very low bar for me from the baseline. But I mean, listen, it's a sport that all brought us together. We love it. And, where the future lies, that's kind of to be determined. I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on that, but ultimately we're all here for the same reason, because we love a sport, and we all need to find our strengths to be able to maximize that reach as much as we can.
You talked about your experience going to Ferris State and getting that PTM degree. We've had people on this podcast over the years talking about the different PTM programs around the country. Do you feel like that should be a prerequisite for especially high performance coaches that are working with kids in a developmental capacity? Or do you feel like PTM is one way to go and there may be other pathways as well that all get us to the same place of having not just competent, but high performing coaches with a high level of knowledge across a variety of disciplines that can help a player maximize their potential?
I think the PTM program is great for everyone, and if you look at the alumni list, we have people out there who are published authors and who are successful club professionals and successful, competitive junior coaches and professional coaches. So at the end of the day, professional tennis management programs give you the path to kind of choose, hey, I want to go to this route. I want to go to this route. When I was a student there, I came in and I had 3 very specific internships that I wanted to go on. And I stated this before I started my freshman year because I just needed the experience. I'm a Florida kid. I love tennis, but the Florida landscape is not open to, hey, let's bring on some high school kid and have him teach a couple hours. In the Northeast, in the Midwest, in places where, pros are sort of, a limited commodity, you might be desperate and bring out some high school kid just to help with camp. In Florida, everyone had to be certified. Everyone had to be a great player. So I never got the opportunity to coach. So when I got into PTM, it was, I want to do my first internship at the summer camps there because I just need the reps. I need the hours. I need to learn what it's like to be on the court. My second internship, I grew up 45 minutes away from Saddlebrook Resort. I was a ball boy there for World Team Tennis and for Virginia Slims. I still give Michael Joyce crap because I was his ball boy in the finals in 1996 for the World Team Tennis Champ. Yeah, so
That's awesome.
I actually have the picture. It was pretty funny. He was on that team with Renee Stubbs, Lisa Raymond. It was and Rick Leach. So it was a pretty solid team. But anyway, so I grew up close to Saddlebrook. That was always a dream of mine to work there, to teach there. So my second internship, I said, I really want to go to Saddlebrook and be, a Harry Hopman tennis pro. And so I got the academy experience, and that was fantastic. And I had a lot of amazing opportunities and made a lot of great friends there. And then my third internship, I said, you know what? I had the summer camps with juniors. I had the academy resort experience with Saddlebrook. I need to be well-rounded. Let me go into the private club world. And so my third internship, I said, I really would like an internship at Philadelphia Cricket Club in Chestnut Hill. And my family's from Pennsylvania. My dad was from Philly. So I'm like, this is great. I've got some family there. Probably ate a little bit too many cheesesteaks that summer, but it's all good. I had an amazing time at Philly Cricket Club. And in fact, when I got back and I graduated, I had a bunch of offers on the table. I had Saddlebrook offered me a job. Philly Cricket Club offered me a job. 2 other places offered me a job. And of course, I turned them all down because everyone thought I was nuts. They're like, what are you doing? But, it's one of those things where PTM gave me the opportunity to choose what path I wanted to go down. If I wanted to go down the sort of competitive coaching route, then I could have done that. If I want to go into the club pro route, I could have done that. So PTM is just that outlet of you choose what you want to do. You can choose your path, and PTM is going to help you. What I wish would happen in the industry is that the $17 million that the US Open made from selling honey deuces, I wish some of those profits could go towards sponsoring or even advertising a PTM program, because there's so many people that don't know about a professional tennis management program. There's Fair State is where I went to, but they have one at Methodist in North Carolina. It's an incredible program, and so many people are like, what? I've never heard of it. And I'm like, if you're a high school player, why would you not want to go into this? Because not only do you get a 4-year degree, but you get to study and play tennis, and you get to meet some amazing people. I mean, I got to meet Tom Gullickson and Peter Burwash and Vic Braden, and it's like, holy cow, this was my dream. It was like Disney World for me. And I just kind of wish there would be more advertisements. I mean, if you watch golf, the PGA Tour, they always have advertisements for PGA Tour and different programs. I would love for the US Open one year to just have nothing but professional tennis management. Like, this is where you need to be. Because for me, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for PTM. It accelerated my career probably 10, 15 years. Because when I got out, my first job out of college, I was a head tennis professional at a private club, a private luxury club in Boca Raton, Florida. single-handedly the most competitive tennis environment in the entire world. And I was able to do that at 21, 22 years old. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that speaks for itself. But listen, you can go in any direction you want to. It's just you have to be able to have that vision. And if you don't have it, they can help you craft it. But you have tons of opportunities to find out what you like, what you don't like, and you can narrow it down from there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And several years ago, I was shocked to learn that the major coaching organizations weren't even testing coaches on the various junior pathways, college recruiting, the competitive structure in the US. Like none of that was being taught or tested. And it made me question why I'm telling parents to hire a certified coach if the certified coaches aren't being trained and tested in the things that should be important to tennis parents. And it's confounding to me that as the consumer side of this whole thing, we are paying most oftentimes six figures for our children's tennis development all throughout the juniors till they get to college, or even more if they go on to the pro tour, because most of them are family funded for at least the first couple years until they break out and start earning money. Yet the coaches that we're paying all this money to don't have an understanding of USTA competitive structure, don't have an understanding of the variety of rating and ranking systems, don't have an understanding of the ITF junior circuit, don't understand what's happening in other countries in terms of their competitive structures. How can they truly help shape our children's tennis future if they don't have an understanding of these things?
Yeah, so I to go back to your initial question, because thanks for bringing me back, because I kind of went off on a tangent about PTM, but you see how much I loved it. But yeah, you make a great point. I can't divulge too much information because I'm sort of in the middle of it now with something, but I'm
That's awfully cagey.
no, it's all good. But what you talked about the education of coaches in terms of tournaments and the management of this and the management of that, we're working on something right now actually for that, for another level of certification. So I think you're going to see that hopefully by 2026 roll out, and it's going to be a much more well-rounded professional in terms of, hey, yes, you can teach a forehand and backhand, but what about actually taking this player on a full pathway, if you will?
Yeah.
And just
I hope you're
Yeah.
seeking input from parents, because there is a disconnect, or traditionally has been a disconnect, between what coaches think is the right path for kids and what parents think is the right path for kids. And one isn't always right and the other always wrong. There needs to be some interfacing between the two. And I think that's been something that's really been lacking. Parents haven't been at the table.
Yeah, if only there was a way that the parents and coaches could somehow communicate. It's amazing. It's an amazing concept, right, Lisa? So
I mean,
yeah, so tennis is a very funny sport because there's such a juxtaposition of, you have the actual demographic of tennis players, and even tennis parents are some of the most uh, economically advantaged or educated in terms of college degrees and everything else. But when it comes to knowing about the actual sport and how things work and operate, I would say the tennis consumer is probably the most uneducated of all sports across the board. Most parents, and you're certainly the exception, but most parents wouldn't know how to sign up their kid for a tournament.
But I'm not the exception.
Okay.
I'm not the exception, Kyle. And that's why Parenting Aces, that's why I started it, 15 years ago, because I was seeking that information as the parent, who, by the way, grew up in a tennis family, grew up playing tennis my whole life, still didn't have a clue what to do to help my kid because he was on a very different trajectory than I was ever on. So yeah, I mean, there's a disconnect, but there's got to be a reason that still exists. And I get very frustrated. I read stuff on these coaching forums about how, it's a shame nobody's out there educating the parents. And I'm,
Right.
waving my arms saying, I've been doing this for 15 years. It's a shame you don't know I exist, so
Right.
that you can pass this along to the parents and make this, by the way, a way more pleasurable journey for everybody, because we're all coming at it from a shared interest in helping these kids achieve their potential.
Yeah, Lisa, we're gonna have to stop this podcast. You're making way too much sense. You're way too logical here. You're way too logical. So, I think going back to my point though, it's amazing how many parents and even how many coaches are kind of left in the dark about how to take those next steps, about how to actually craft that plan, and how parents can actually help their child, and how the coach can help the parent. And it's, people are like, oh, the parents have to stay out of it, and the parents have, it's like, no, like, you need the parent to be a part of it. It's a triangle. It's not just player and coach, and then the parent just sits on the side or just, writes the checks. It shouldn't be like that at all. Right? That's the worst, and that's what gives everyone the heebie-jeebies about like tennis and getting your kid involved in tennis. It's like, oh, well, it's such a money pit and this and that. Well, the parent needs to be involved, and the best way to do that is obviously the coach and parent have to have a transparent, open relationship in terms of, what, this is what I can do for your child. This is what has to happen. If your child wants to get here, then these are the steps that need to be taken. But most coaches are like, hey, I'll teach your kid for a couple $100 a week. Thank you so much. And then nothing really happens. And then the kid leaves, and the kid stops playing tennis after high school. And the parent's like, well, I just dumped a bunch of money and I have absolutely zero return on investment and nothing to show for it. And, it's difficult. The parents have to get more information from the coaches. The coaches have to get more information from the industry and from the different governing bodies. And that's all it is. Is it an easy answer? Not really, but when you think about it, it's a pretty logical step of, we just need to communicate better. But a big part of this too is, and you're gonna be shocked when I say this, a lot of coaches out there have an ego. And so I know, right? Stop. Your jaw just hit the floor. But a lot of coaches get into this mode of gatekeeper, where it's like, oh, well, I control all the information and I'm going to do this, and that way it forces the parent and the player to become so reliant on the coach that there's now a power imbalance. And then that coach just kind of takes it and runs with it, which honestly to me is criminal behavior. But parents need to be involved, and it needs to be a team, right? To go fast, you go alone. To go far, you go as a team. And so it needs to be a team, and everyone needs to be reading from the same page. And obviously that's a lot easier said than done, but it just starts with the first conversation, right?
Well, yes, but also, I mean, I have been begging since I started this whole thing for coaches, just provide, when you have a new family come into your club, your academy, your system, provide a one-sheeter that says, these are my responsibilities as your child's coach. These are your child's responsibilities as someone that I'm going to work with. And then these are your responsibilities as the parent. That simple one piece of paper could make things so much better for everybody. And it's not like it's something that has to be tweaked for every family that comes in. Create it one time, email it as a PDF. Like, this is so easy to accomplish, yet so few coaches even do that simple step.
So it's not
few
just
parents demand it. Few parents demand
because
it.
the parents don't know. The parents are just led to believe that, hey, I'm going to give my kid to this stranger and they're going to hopefully improve them and make them better. And it's like, well, you not only have to have the responsibilities, but there also needs to be expectations.
And accountability.
Of course. And that's something that one pager can do, but again, when you give that one pager, what does that give everyone? It gives everyone equity and balance and transparency, which unfortunately sometimes in our industry, um, just has been lacking. It's been a shady industry, especially. I don't know how it is in Southern California, but in Florida, I like to have a saying: it's a sunny place for shady people, and that goes for tennis pros and coaches, and it's too bad. And that's something that our industry. I know the RSPA is really trying to change. We're trying to make it a lot more professional in how we do things and standards and everything else. So, that's an ongoing battle. And what you just suggested there is a very simple solution. But again, that solution gives people, the responsibility of, oh my goodness, I have to actually live up to this. And for coaches, for players and parents, it might not be that big of a deal. But for coaches, it's like, oh boy, I actually have to deliver on my promise. Imagine that.
Well, and you're calling yourself a teaching professional already,
Mm.
but this is part of being a professional, is setting expectations, having regular check-ins and accountability, fixing things that break,
Yeah,
making
having
changes when things
having
aren't working.
having mandatory education requirements, which in fairness the teaching organizations do, but obviously a lot of the people that care like you do and like I do, we're always pushing for more. Because if you're a doctor or a lawyer, or if you're a nurse, or if you're anything, if you're a speech pathologist, like my wife Lisa, and
Right.
yeah, she's a CEO of a 501(c)(3), but guess what? She still maintains her educational credits. And guess what? For all the tennis professionals out there that are like complaining about, their salary and how much they get paid and how hard they work, well, you know what? You got to increase the education too. There's a certain expectation. If you want to be the best and you want to get paid like the best, like a doctor or a lawyer, well, there's certain things you have to do off the court that are going to require that. And that's the thing too, is investing in yourself. Keep growing. You know how many professionals are out there that haven't been to a conference or have no education credits whatsoever, and they're teaching the same way that they've been since 1985? Like, that's a little bit scary. And so what
And
happens
it's
is,
not only the club professionals and the academy professionals, it's the college coaches too.
of course, of course, and that's the thing, is it's, oh well, I'm so busy, and I'm like, but you can't just stop. You have to keep growing. You don't keep going. You keep growing. And it's the mindset of, well, I feel like I already know everything. And it's like, wow, that's almost as bad as the business term of, well, we've always done it this way. Like when you hear that from a business owner, like run away. Like that's
Yeah.
the worst sentence in business. So in our profession, it's, oh well, I already know everything. And the truth of the matter is, if you think you're too good, it's really hard to get any better.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is with tennis, there's certain fundamentals that don't change in the sport.
Sure.
They're understanding grips, understanding the variety of strings and rackets and other equipment out there. I mean, yes, new products come on market and you have to learn about that stuff, but
Mhm.
they're fundamentals that stay the same. For a while, several years ago, everybody was looking to Spain because Spain was producing all these number ones and, top 10 players and whatever. And everybody's like, oh, we've got to do it like they're doing it in Spain. Well, guess what? In Spain, everything is very basic. It's very fundamental. You go on a court with a Spanish coach at a Spanish club or a Spanish academy, you're hitting, 50 cross court forehands in a row, then 50 down the line forehands in a row, and you're aiming for cones. And it's the same fundamental drills. There's no magic to it in that regard. What changes is knowledge, science, technology. All of these things are developing. And if coaches aren't keeping up with that, then like you said, they're falling behind, right? So it's this mindset of, well, tennis is all about fundamentals. Yes, it is. And it's also about understanding nutrition. It's about I mean, mental health was never spoken about when I was coming up in sport. It was not an issue. Now, you better believe that coaches have got to be concerned with the mental health of the players that they're working with. And if they're not, disaster is likely to ensue. So there's a lot to keep learning. And I get very frustrated by people that say, I know it all. I've been doing this for 40 years, blah, 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 blah. Well, goody for you. And there's always something new to learn.
Well, that, and also just understanding that the only two fixed things in tennis really is that there's the laws of physics that exist in our known universe, and that the court is a rectangle.
Yeah.
After that, it's like the ball doesn't know if it's being hit in Spain or the US or Sweden. Like you still have to put in the work. There's still certain principles that you have to follow. And ultimately, for the coach, back in the day, coaches used to be a lot more dogmatic. And it was like, it's my way or the highway, and this is my system. And ultimately, even the best coaches in the world, the coaches that we think were like really hard, strict coaches, were actually some of the most adaptable, because you have to be. If you look at, I hate to compare countries because it's just not fair, but if you look at the Czech Republic, they produce so many players after so many players, and there's that tendency to be like they're hardcore, strict Eastern European. And at the end of the day, if you look at the Czech system, what makes it so successful is that, like any good system, it adapts to the player. The player doesn't adapt to the system. And for a lot of coaches here, it's, well, this is my way and I have to do it this way. A good coach will have their principles and they will communicate those principles to the player. But at the same time, a coach will know how to communicate those principles and be flexible enough. I've never treated two players the same. I've always treated them fairly, but I've never treated them the same, because it's just so difficult, especially in a country of 350 million people. Comparing that to a country of 5 or 6 million, it's completely different. But we just have to be a lot more open-minded and understand that our communication has to get better. The way we hit a ball is the way we hit a ball. And listen, if you put Medvedev on a court as a junior with any American coach, they're going to go crazy and they're going to say, oh, you can't hit your backhand that way. You can't hit your forehand that way. Look at your serve. You can't move that way. You're 6'6". What are you doing 20 feet behind the baseline? There's no way that'll work. And he won a Grand Slam. He was number one in the world. So we have to be a little bit more open-minded and not so dogmatic and say, listen, I see this player for what they are. But a lot of times as coaches, we get in this habit of we're always looking for what's wrong, but we don't actually look for what's right. And if we look for that, then we can start to build a game style. We can build strategy. We can build strokes around what this player does really, really well, as opposed to just trying to break down the player.
Kyle, do you agree that there is a difference between a coach who sets high expectations and holds players accountable and doesn't waver from that, versus a coach who is dogmatic in a cruel way? Right? There's a difference there. And there's this, I don't know, a trend maybe in our culture that's been coming for a while, where, if a coach sets demands and holds the player and the parent, anybody involved, accountable for meeting those demands, then that coach is deemed a hard ass, not somebody you want your child around. They're going to harm your child's ego and constitution and stress them out. And I think we've got to find our way back to, and I'm kind of meandering here, but when Michael and Todd were on the podcast a few weeks ago, we talked about this, that there's this mindset now that if you hold a kid accountable to something that they've said they want to achieve, that you're mean or cruel or going to damage their mental health. And I just don't feel like that's true. There is a difference between holding someone accountable and being cruel. Help me out
Again,
here. I'm meandering,
yeah.
but
No.
I really
You're
I
spot
have
on.
in my head what I'm trying to say.
I get it. So I'm gonna break it down like this for you. You first have to realize, and any good coach will do this, you have to realize why the player is out there in the first place. Essentially, there's the 3 E's. Are they out there for education? Are they out there for exercise? Or are they out there for enjoyment? Are they just out there playing with their friends? Are they out there because they actually want to train? Are they out there because, you know what, they do another sport, they do cross country, they do something else, and it's just cross training. When you get into the sort of player performance arena, which I'm sure that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah. People have to understand training was not meant for enjoyment. It was meant for improvement. And when you talk about mental health, right? I hear this all the time. When you talk about mental health, I think, to me personally, and again, maybe it's just me, but I think it does a lot more damage to my mental health knowing that I had a dream and I quit on it because it got too tough, rather than me going for it and maybe falling a little short, but knowing I gave it everything I had. To me, that's a lot more detrimental. That would give me PTSD of knowing I didn't try enough, I didn't try hard enough for it. But you as the player, if you're a child, you are the one that is ultimately responsible. You are the CEO of your own tennis company as a player. I don't care how old you are. You could be 8 years old. You know what? I want you taking your rackets into the pro shop and telling the pro shop attendant, these are my rackets. I'd like them strung at, 52 pounds, whatever. Develop that sense of self and that empowerment early on so that when you become older, things don't seem as tough. Because when baby bird leaves the nest, things become a lot tougher. I can tell you, as a longtime adult, adulting can sometimes suck. I wish I was still a junior. I wish I had the high school drama. I wish I had that pop quiz geography assignment that showed up on a Thursday or Friday afternoon. Adulting can be difficult. So, when you're talking about, training and there's a tough coach and there's discipline. Listen, a coach will understand and be able to read the player quite well if they're good. They will know where that line is. Again, a coach has principles and a coach has the line, but depending on the player, a coach can move that line if they need to. Just ask Dick Gould from Stanford University. He had a couple decent players on his team. One of them was John McEnroe, and John
just
McEnroe,
one or two.
Yeah, exactly. Just one or two. But John McEnroe kind of pushed that one. But Dick Gould knew, like, this is like, yes, I have principles. Yes, there's a certain way to go about things, but for certain instances, certain nuances, you have to be able to make not exceptions to the rule, but you have to be able to bend and not break. And as long as that player respects those boundaries and knows how to bend it and not break it, then there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, I mean, we as a culture, we need to get a little bit tougher. But again, it's up to the player. How badly does the player want it? Because I can guarantee that player that the one day they don't want it and they decide to take off from practice, or they don't give 100% in practice, there's 100, maybe 1,000 players out there that do. And if you ever play that player in a tournament, you're going to lose. So it's up to you as a player to say, this is how badly I want it. And if I'm going to work with this coach, let's say Todd, right, in Coral Springs, and I've known Todd for many years. If I'm going to work with Todd and I'm going to see him more than I'm going to see my own family, this is a commitment not only from Todd, and I need to respect his time, but it's a commitment from me as well. And you have to make that deal. You have to write that contract in your head that this is going to be really tough. But the reason it's really tough is because I'm going for something that's really, really big. And if it's not tough, you have to question, is my goal big enough? Am I being pushed enough? But ultimately, it comes down to the player. How much can the player push themselves? And yes, it's going to get tough. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? But it's not. Right. So that's just one of those things where, listen, yes, you can be tough and you can be strict and you can be mean and you can be a disciplinarian, or you can have principles and you can have empathy. And there's a big difference there, right? A good coach can be.
That's the word. That's the word that I missed. Empathy.
Yes. All great
it.
coaches have to have it. All great coaches have to have it. And that is why oftentimes some of the best players in the world can make the worst coaches, because they don't understand. Like you look at Nick Bollettieri, he was maybe a 3-5 player, if that, being generous. I've never seen him actually hit a ball. I can't tell you if he has a two-handed backhand or one-handed backhand, but you know what? He was a great coach because he got into the player's head and he knew what to tell them and he had empathy. And you have to be able to have that. You can't just walk around the court with your racket on your chest, holding it and just saying, you have to do it this way. You have to do, what's wrong with you? How come you can't do it this way? You have to understand the player's plight, right? That's why, I mean, I'm a coach developer for RSPA. And what I do for all the coaches when they give a lesson, if they are ever a student in that lesson, I make them play with their opposite hand so that they understand, because they're going to struggle with it and they're going to understand the frustration as a student. So that way, when they become the coach, they now say, okay, I need to do a better job explaining. I need to do a better job communicating, and I need to show more empathy. I just can't assume, oh, this player's terrible. Well, the players aren't terrible. You might be a terrible coach, because you have to get to the player. You have to get to the player's level eventually in order for the player to see, okay, he's actually on my side. He's working with me, or she's working with me. And that's critical, because any great coach, and anyone will tell you this, any great coach, the real secret, what makes them truly great, isn't their knowledge, it's not their passion, it's not their motivation, it's that they are able to take an idea or a concept and implant it in the player's head and make the player believe that it's their idea and it's their concept. And the player then buys into it, and then all of a sudden the player has all this confidence saying, man, that was such a great idea, I had it, I'm feeling good. That's the key. That's the secret. But you have to be able to throw away the ego and have some empathy and understand what the player's going through.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. I could talk to you all day, Kyle. We need to set up a time for an offline chat too, because
offline chat, or we can do part 2. It's not a problem.
Well, both. Both. And there's just my wheels are turning listening to you, and I feel like there's so much potential here to make some real difference in the way that we are approaching tennis coaching, tennis development, coaching education, all these things, right? And I think, again, having a parent's voice at the table when these policies are being developed, I think is super important. And I think you understand that. So I think we're on the cusp of maybe some really positive change, which makes me happy. But
I personally think we're just, today's conversation, I think we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more to do, but again, it goes back to my original thought, which is we love tennis so much because we know deep down inside it's the best sport ever. Like, yes, people play pickleball and people play padel and people play squash and badminton and platform tennis and they play baseball and basketball, all the sport. That's great, but you know what? Tennis drew us in. We are in love with tennis. We need to make sure the rest of the world knows how great a sport tennis is. But the problem is, at the very early level of junior tennis, it's very easy to kind of push people away from that because there's this underbelly that a lot of people don't know until they get involved, and it turns a lot of people off. Listen, I've never met a player or even a junior that quit tennis because they don't like tennis. I've met a lot of juniors that quit because they don't like the experience. And that's why people quit anything. It's not because they don't like the activity, they don't like the experience. That's what people quit. But to quit the experience, unfortunately, you have to cut ties with the activity. And that's the sad thing. We need to make people fall in love with that experience again. That's all it is.
Yeah, love it. Kyle, thank you so much for this conversation and opening the door to future conversations. I'm looking forward to keeping this going, and please give my best to Lisa as well. And yeah, this has been very thought-provoking. For a Friday afternoon, my wheels are going, but I've enjoyed it very much and appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. It's a great day. It's a great time to end the week with this podcast, right? Friday afternoon. Got the wheels thinking. So
yeah, love it. Thank you. And to my audience, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.